The crash. Ur stood on the observation deck of his exploratory spacecraft, his deep blue eyes reflecting the swirling blues and greens of the planet below. His chemical-sensitive antennae twitched intermittently, sampling the sterile air inside the cabin as he contemplated the world known to its inhabitants as Earth, classified in his database as a Class X death world. The complex patterns on his emerald-green skin shimmered under the soft glow of the control panels. As a Hydraxian, his species required continuous dampness to function, making this mission particularly challenging. The planet below, with its vast dry regions and unpredictable climate patterns, represented everything his kind typically avoided. Yet here he was, continuing his family's legacy of xenobiological research. The Hydraxian Science Academy had been clear: no landing, no contact, just observation. Earth had been quarantined for good reason: its hostile environment, aggressive apex predators, and the presence of a rapidly developing sentient species made it too dangerous for direct interaction. A soft chime interrupted his thoughts. The ship's AI, Aria, had completed its preliminary scan of human communication networks. Analysis complete, the AI announced in its characteristic melodic tone. Would you like to review the findings? Display primary points of interest, Ur commanded, his antennae perking up with curiosity. Holographic displays materialized around him, showing fragments of human broadcasts, social media feeds, and scientific data. Their technology was primitive by Hydraxian standards, but their progress over the last century was remarkable. They had gone from horse-drawn carriages to space exploration in less than 200 years, a pace that both impressed and terrified the galactic community. As Ur absorbed the information, his attention was drawn to images of Earth's most dangerous creatures. Apex predators with rows of serrated teeth, venomous insects, and microscopic pathogens capable of felling even the mightiest beings. So engrossed was he in these revelations that he missed the blinking warning about potential collision with space debris. The first impact came without warning, a deafening crunch that echoed through the ship as alerts of danger popped up on every screen. Several fragments peppered the vessel in rapid succession, ricocheting off with a chorus of clanks and bangs. The entire craft lurched and groaned under the assault, the view outside becoming a deadly kaleidoscope of twisted shards and splintered glass. Aria, status report. Ur shouted, his fingers dancing across the control panel as he tried to stabilize the ship. Hull integrity compromised, the AI responded, its usual melodic tone replaced by urgent staccato. Primary thrusters offline. Secondary systems failing. Debris field density increasing. Calculating alternative trajectories. How did we miss this? Ur demanded, his antennae rigid with stress. The debris field was masked by a defunct human satellite cluster. Their orbital tracking systems are inadequate. A sudden jolt rocked the ship, snapping Ur's attention to the external sensors. A swarm of debris surrounded his vessel, twisted metal shards and defunct satellites whirled chaotically in the planet's orbit. How could they allow this? He muttered in disbelief. Their own world, trapped in a cage of their making. Warning lights flashed as the ship's trajectory began to decay. Earth's atmosphere loomed closer, its gravitational pull becoming increasingly impossible to resist. Ur's training kicked in as he assessed his options. The ship's self-repair systems had activated, nanobots swarming over damaged components, but full restoration would take longer than the drag of the upper atmosphere would allow. Running a quick diagnostic, Ur calculated that by ejecting all non-essential weight, specifically the ship's water reserves and compressed air, he could achieve a controlled descent. It was a sacrifice that went against every instinct of his water-dependent biology, but survival demanded difficult choices. As the ship breached the upper atmosphere, turbulence battered its weakened frame. Flames licked at the viewports, and the control panels flickered ominously. Scanning for a suitable landing site, Ur's gaze settled on a vast field of green, a promising oasis amidst the planet's rugged terrain. But as they descended closer, he realized with alarm that his high-altitude perspective had deceived him. What he had taken for small plants were towering stalks that stretched skyward. Consulting the human data, he identified the area as a cornfield, though the database had failed to convey its true scale. Arya, divert all remaining power to landing thrusters and stabilizers, Ur commanded, his voice steady despite the chaos around him. We're going to thread through these giants. Acknowledged, the AI responded, its voice growing fainter as systems were reprioritized. Warning, power reserves critical. Emergency protocols engaged. Initiating emergency landing sequence. The ship skimmed past the giant leaves, which slapped against the hull with unsettling thuds. Despite Ur's efforts to minimize impact, warning lights illuminated the cockpit as new damage registered. Finally, the vessel lurched to a halt, nestled among the alien greenery. For several moments, Ur sat motionless, his antennae drooping with exhaustion as he surveyed the flickering systems. The landing had spared his life but left his ship in dire straits. Emergency lighting cast an eerie red glow throughout the cabin as secondary systems shut down one by one. Arya, he called out, but received only static in response. The AI core had gone into emergency hibernation, attempting to preserve what little power remained. Ur hurriedly donned his nanosuit, the flexible material conforming perfectly to his emerald frame. He secured a chemical protection mask over his face, its filters humming softly as they shielded him from the Death World's air. Moving swiftly, he powered down all non-essential ship systems to conserve energy. The quiet that followed was unsettling. With Arya offline, Ur was truly alone, stranded on a world that his people had deemed too dangerous to visit. As he initiated the self-repair protocols, he contemplated the challenges ahead. He would need to find water to sustain himself, avoid detection by the indigenous species, and somehow signal for rescue without drawing attention from Earth's primitive but numerous inhabitants. For the first time in all his Death World explorations, Ur approached the secured safe near the ramp. With a quick biometric scan, it unlocked to reveal his portable laser gun, a weapon he had never before needed to use. The gun felt foreign yet reassuring in his grip, the nanosuit's fabric morphing seamlessly to accommodate it. As he prepared to venture outside, Ur activated his four-legged water tank, a robotic carrier designed to follow him and collect water from external sources. At least this piece of equipment had survived the crash intact, though its capacity was limited compared to the ship's now empty reserves. Standing at the ship's hatch, Ur took a deep breath of filtered air. Begin recording, first entry on Earth. I, xenobiologist Ur of the Hydraxian Science Academy, have crash-landed on Quarantine World X-3847, designated Earth by its indigenous population. My mission parameters have shifted from observation to survival. May the cosmic currents guide my path. With those words, he pressed the hatch release, ready to take his first steps onto humanity's home world, a planet that would either become his salvation or his tomb. First encounters. The cornfield stretched endlessly in every direction, a maze of towering green giants that dwarfed both Ur and his robotic water tank. His visor's heads-up display constantly updated with atmospheric readings, marking the air as a toxic soup of nitrogen, oxygen, and various trace elements that would be lethal to his Hydraxian physiology without protection. The water tank's legs whirred mechanically as it followed him, each step calculating the most stable path through the uneven terrain. Ur had climbed atop it, using its height to better survey his surroundings. His ship was already lost to view, hidden among the cornfield's vegetative titans. As the local star, the sun, as humans called it, began its descent, Ur's sensors detected a change in the atmosphere. The temperature was dropping, and humidity levels were rising. His antennae twitched beneath his protective mask as they detected traces of water vapor condensing on the leaves around him. Fascinating, he muttered, recording his observations. The plants serve as natural moisture collectors. He directed the water tank to extend its collection appendages, gathering the precious condensation. It wasn't much, but it would help supplement his dwindling supplies. A sudden rustling in the vegetation ahead froze him in place. His visor's bioscanner flashed a warning, "Caution, medium-sized mammalian predator detected." The readings matched his database entry for Canis latrans, what humans called a coyote. The creature emerged from between the cornstalks, its yellow eyes reflecting the fading sunlight. It was larger than Ur had anticipated, its lean frame speaking of both agility and hunger. The coyote's nose twitched as it caught his alien scent, confusion evident in its posture. Ur's hand moved to his laser gun, but he hesitated. Every action on this world could have unforeseen consequences. A dead predator might attract unwanted attention, while the energy signature of his weapon could be detected by human monitoring systems. The coyote made the decision for him, lunging forward with surprising speed. Ur commanded the water tank to rear up on its back legs, using its bulk as a shield. The predator's teeth scraped harmlessly against the metal chassis, but the sudden movement caused Ur to lose his balance. He tumbled backward, landing hard on the ground. His protective suit absorbed most of the impact, but the fall had disoriented him. The coyote circled around the water tank, its attention now fully focused on the prone alien. In desperation, Ur activated his suit's emergency deterrent, a high-frequency sound generator designed to repel Earth's wildlife. The effect was immediate. The coyote yelped, shaking its head in distress before retreating into the corn. Breathing heavily, Ur climbed back onto the water tank. The encounter had taught him a valuable lesson about Earth's predators. They were far more aggressive than the sanitized data had suggested. As darkness fell, new challenges emerged. His visor's night vision revealed a world teeming with life. Insects buzzed through the air, small mammals scurried through the undergrowth, and somewhere in the distance, an owl's haunting call echoed through the night. The water tank sensors indicated a larger water source nearby. Following the readings, Ur guided his mechanical companion through the cornfield until they emerged at the edge of a small pond. The sight of so much water made his skin tingle beneath his protective suit, but his sensors warned of multiple hazards, microorganisms, chemical pollutants, and dissolved minerals that could be harmful to his biology. While the water tank began its purification process, Ur studied the pond's ecosystem. Frogs croaked from the shoreline, their calls creating a complex symphony. Small fish created ripples on the surface as they fed on insects. It was beautiful but alien, a reminder that every aspect of this world had evolved to survive in conditions that his people would consider hellish. A new sound caught his attention, mechanical, rhythmic, approaching from the distance. His visor's enhanced audio processing identified it as an internal combustion engine. Humans were nearby. Quickly, Ur directed the water tank into the cover of the cornfield, but not before its sensors had collected enough water for emergency processing. The mechanical sounds grew louder, accompanied by voices and artificial light. Through gaps in the vegetation, he caught glimpses of what his database identified as an all-terrain vehicle, or ATV. "I'm telling you, Mike, something came down in that cornfield," a gruff human voice declared. "Saw it with my own eyes, looked like a meteor, but it was moving all wrong." "Could have been a drone," another voice responded. "Military's always testing something new out here." Ur's translator processed their words, but their casual tone belied the danger they represented. His ship's crash had been noticed, and soon others would come looking. He needed to return to his vessel and accelerate the repairs. The human's lights swept across the cornfield, passing dangerously close to his position. The water tank's camouflage systems activated, blending its metallic surface with the surrounding vegetation. Ur's own suit shifted colors to match, making him nearly invisible in the darkness. "Look at this," one of the humans called out. Their light illuminated the area where the water tank had been collecting water. "These tracks, never seen anything like them." Ur silently cursed his oversight. In his haste to retreat, he hadn't considered that the water tank would leave evidence of its presence. The human's lights began methodically sweeping the cornfield, moving in a search pattern that would eventually lead them to his position. A distant rumble of thunder provided unexpected aid. The humans' conversation turned to the approaching storm, their search forgotten in favor of seeking shelter. As they departed, Uhr's sensors detected a rapid drop in barometric pressure. Earth's weather was about to demonstrate its volatile nature. The storm arrived with shocking intensity. Lightning split the sky, followed by deafening thunder that made his antennae vibrate even through his protective gear. The rain came next, not the gentle precipitation he was familiar with, but powerful sheets of water that bent the corn stalks and turned the ground to mud. The water tank struggled to maintain its footing in the deteriorating conditions. Each flash of lightning illuminated the chaos around them, creating strobing shadows that played tricks on Uhr's vision. His suit's environmental controls worked overtime to maintain his body temperature as the wind drove the rain sideways. Through his visor's enhanced vision, Uhr spotted something that made his heart race: lights in the distance, too numerous and organized to be natural. According to his database, he was seeing a human settlement. The realization brought both hope and dread. Settlements meant infrastructure, possibly parts and materials he could use to repair his ship. But they also meant more humans, more chances of discovery, and more danger. A particularly violent gust of wind nearly toppled the water tank. Uhr made a quick decision: they needed better shelter to wait out the storm. His sensors indicated a large structure nearby, its thermal signature suggesting it was unoccupied. Guiding the water tank through the storm-tossed cornfield, they eventually reached what his database identified as a barn, a storage structure for agricultural equipment and supplies. The large double doors were secured with a primitive mechanical lock, which his suit's nano-tools made quick work of. Inside, the barn was a cathedral of shadows and unfamiliar shapes. Farm machinery loomed like sleeping giants, and the roof creaked ominously in the wind. But it was dry, and his scanners detected no immediate threats. As Uhr settled in to wait out the storm, he began processing the water they'd collected. His encounters so far had reinforced everything the Academy had taught about Earth: it was beautiful, terrifying, and utterly unpredictable. But there was something else, something the data hadn't conveyed. This world had a raw vitality to it, an energy that seemed to pulse through every living thing. The barn's doors rattled in a strong gust, and through a gap, Uhr caught a glimpse of the human settlement's lights reflecting off the low storm clouds. Tomorrow, he would need to venture closer to civilization, a prospect that filled him with equal parts anticipation and dread. For now, though, he focused on surviving the night, listening to the thunder's roll and wondering if anyone else was watching those same lights, perhaps pondering the strange tracks by the pond, or the mysterious object that had fallen from the sky. Human contact. Dawn broke over the barn with dangerous beauty, sending shafts of light through gaps in the weathered wooden walls. Uhr's visor automatically adjusted to the changing illumination as he reviewed the night's water purification results. The storm had provided enough clean water to replenish his suit's hydration systems, but his ship's repairs would require specialized materials. His database of human settlements indicated he had taken shelter on the outskirts of what they called a small town, population approximately 2,500. The settlement's limited size meant fewer eyes to avoid, but also fewer resources to salvage. According to his scans, the nearest technology center was a place humans called Radio Shack, though his data suggested these establishments were largely extinct. A sudden bang made his antennae stiffen beneath his mask. The barn's main door creaked open, allowing morning light to flood the interior. Uhr quickly activated his suit's camouflage and pressed himself against the shadows behind a large red machine his database identified as a tractor. "I'm telling you, Dad, someone broke in last night," a young human voice declared. "Look at the lock." "Could have been the storm, Tommy," an older voice responded. "Wouldn't be the first time." Uhr held perfectly still as two humans entered, an adult male and what appeared to be his juvenile offspring. Their biorhythm patterns registered clearly on his visor's display, along with detailed anatomical scans that both fascinated and disturbed him. Humans were far more complex than the Academy's simplified models had suggested. The younger human moved through the barn, investigating with surprising thoroughness. "The floor's wet here," he called out. And look at these marks, they're like nothing I've ever seen. The water tank had left distinctive prints in the dust despite its camouflage system. Ur silently berated himself for the oversight. The elder human knelt to examine the tracks, his expression troubled. This matches what Mike and Jerry were talking about, the man muttered. The strange tracks by Miller's Pond. He pulled out a primitive communication device, a smartphone, and began capturing images of the evidence. Ur's situation was deteriorating rapidly. The humans were between him and the barn's main exit, and his scans showed no other easy escape route. The water tank, though camouflaged, was too large to move without detection. He needed a diversion. Accessing his suit's systems, Ur prepared to activate the same sonic deterrent that had repelled the coyote. But before he could execute this plan, a new voice called from outside. Sheriff's Department. Anyone in there? The situation had just become significantly worse. His database indicated that sheriff meant local law enforcement, humans tasked specifically with investigating unusual occurrences. Morning, Sheriff Chen, the older human called back. Just checking on some break-in damage. You might want to see this. A third human entered the barn, wearing a distinctive uniform. Her equipment belt carried what Ur's scans identified as a projectile weapon, primitive but undoubtedly lethal. More concerning was the device in her hand, which was giving off electromagnetic readings consistent with a radiation detector. Got reports of unusual activity in this area last night, the sheriff explained, sweeping the device in a careful pattern. FAA noticed something on radar, and the local observatory reported some kind of atmospheric disturbance. The detector's steady beep suddenly increased in frequency as she approached Ur's position. The camouflage system might hide him from visual detection, but it couldn't mask his ship's residual radiation signature. In that moment of rising tension, fate intervened in an unexpected way. The younger human, Tommy, had been examining the tractor's engine compartment with a portable light. His probing disturbed a nest of what Ur's database identified as Mus musculus, common mice. The creatures burst from their hiding place in a panic, streaming across the barn floor. The resulting chaos was instantaneous. The older human jumped back with a startled curse, colliding with the sheriff and sending her radiation detector clattering across the floor. Tommy lost his balance and grabbed a nearby shelf for support, causing several tools to crash down. Ur seized his chance. As the humans were distracted, he activated his suit's electromagnetic pulse generator, a last resort tool that would temporarily disable nearby electronic devices. The pulse was localized enough to avoid detection from orbit but strong enough to affect the immediate area. The barn plunged into confusion as the humans' devices failed simultaneously. The sheriff's radiation detector went silent, their phones died, and even the tractor's electronic systems sparked briefly before falling dark. What the hell? The sheriff muttered, trying unsuccessfully to restart her equipment. Using the confusion to his advantage, Ur slipped past them toward the door. He had almost made it when Tommy turned suddenly, the beam of his now flickering flashlight passing directly through Ur's camouflaged form. For a fraction of a second, their eyes met. The boy's mouth opened in shock, but before he could speak, Ur activated his suit's neural pacification field, a gentle pulse that would make the human question whether what he'd seen was real. Tommy's eyes glazed slightly, and he shook his head as if clearing it. Did you see that? Tommy asked uncertainly. See what, son? His father responded, still focused on his dead phone. I'm not sure. Something by the door. Like a shimmer in the air. The sheriff's professional instincts kicked in. Everyone out, she ordered. I'm calling for backup, or I will be, once I get to my car radio. Ur didn't wait to hear more. He slipped out of the barn and into the morning light, his camouflage adapting to the new environment. The water tank, responding to his neural commands, would remain hidden until it could safely follow. But his immediate concern was finding shelter. The electromagnetic pulse would buy him some time, but he knew human authorities would soon converge on the area. His ship was too damaged for immediate evacuation, and now he had lost his primary source of water collection. As he moved carefully through the morning shadows, Ur spotted something that both solved his immediate problem and created new ones, an abandoned structure on the outskirts of town. His scans showed it to be a defunct water treatment facility, complete with underground storage tanks and access to the local power grid. It would make an excellent temporary base, but reaching it meant moving closer to the human settlement than he had ever intended. As emergency vehicles began arriving at the barn behind him, their sirens piercing the morning quiet, Ur knew he had no choice. He had already been seen once, however briefly, and it was only a matter of time before the humans organized a proper search. The water treatment facility beckoned, its rusty gates hanging open like an invitation. As Ur made his way toward it, he couldn't shake the memory of Tommy's wide-eyed stare. The neural pacification field would make the boy doubt his senses, but doubt wasn't the same as forgetting. For the first time since crash landing on Earth, Ur realized that remaining completely hidden might not be possible. The question now was not if he would have further contact with humans, but when, and whether that contact would lead to his salvation or his doom. The chase. The abandoned water treatment facility proved to be both sanctuary and prison. Through the facility's grimy windows, Ur watched military vehicles roll into town, heavy trucks bearing the letters USAF. His database identified them as belonging to something called Project Blue Book, though the information was decades out of date. His water tank had successfully navigated its way to him during the night, using back routes and drainage ditches to avoid detection. Now it stood in a corner of the facility's main building, processing the stagnant water from the underground tanks. The liquid was far from ideal, but Ur's filtration systems could make it usable. Priority assessment, he muttered, recording his thoughts. Ship repairs require conductive materials, preferably copper or aluminum. Local power grid contains sufficient quantities, but extraction would be noticeable. Alternative sources needed. His visor's heads-up display showed a map of the town, marking potential resource locations. A promising target was the local high school's science lab, which his scans indicated contained various useful materials. But reaching it meant crossing the increasingly monitored town center. A sudden burst of radio chatter caught his attention. His suit's communications interceptor translated the encrypted signals. Echo team in position at the barn site. Radiation signatures confirm anomalous activity. Pattern matches the Roswell and Trinidad incidents. Copy Echo team. Sweep pattern Delta authorized. Be advised, civilian witnesses report possible active camouflage technology. All units switch to thermal and UV spectrum scanning. Ur's antennae twitched nervously beneath his mask. His suit's camouflage could fool regular vision and most scanning equipment, but prolonged exposure to thermal imaging would eventually reveal his presence. He needed to move quickly. The facility's ancient computer system had taken little effort to access. Its connection to the town's network was primitive but functional, allowing him to monitor local communications and security systems. What he discovered was troubling. The military was establishing a perimeter around the town, and more specialized equipment was en route. A new alert flashed across his visor. His ship's automated distress beacon had begun broadcasting on encrypted Hydraxian frequencies. The self-repair systems had restored enough power for basic communications, but the signal would be detectable by human instruments, even if they couldn't decode it. Warning, his suit's AI announced. Multiple aerial surveillance drones approaching current position. Thermal masking at maximum capacity. Ur made a quick decision. Staying in the facility was becoming too risky, but moving during daylight would be equally dangerous. He needed a diversion, something to draw attention away from both his current location and his ship. Accessing the town's power grid through the facility's old control systems, he began a calculated series of manipulations. Power surges and failures would begin occurring at random points across town, creating confusion and dividing the search team's attention. As he prepared to move out, a familiar voice caught his attention through the intercepted communications. "Dad, I'm telling you what I saw. It wasn't human, the way it moved, the way it looked. You have to believe me. Tommy." The neural pacification field hadn't been as effective as hoped. The boy's testimony would make the searchers even more determined. Ur activated his suit's external sensors, confirming the positions of nearby search teams. The path to the high school was heavily monitored, but he noticed something interesting: the search patterns focused on ground level and above. They weren't checking the town's drainage system. His water tank could handle submersion, and his suit was already designed for wet conditions. The town's storm drains and sewers would provide a perfect concealed route, assuming he could handle whatever indigenous life forms lurked in those dark passages. As he prepared to move out, his suit's sensors detected an approaching vehicle, different from the military trucks. Through the facility's clouded windows, he spotted a familiar truck parking nearby. Tommy had returned, and he wasn't alone. "This is where the power surges are strongest," Tommy's voice carried clearly through Ur's audio sensors. "And look at these readings on the EMF meter. You really think your alien came here?" Another young voice, female, approximately the same age as Tommy. "Sarah, you saw the pictures from the barn. Those weren't normal tracks, and now all these government people are here. Something big is happening." Ur watched as the two young humans approached the facility's entrance. Their primitive scanning equipment was actually quite clever, modified consumer electronics that could detect various energy signatures. These humans were more resourceful than expected. He needed to act fast. The military would eventually track the power fluctuations to the facility, and now these young humans were about to stumble upon him. But simply running wasn't an option, they would alert the search teams instantly. A crazy idea formed in his mind. The Academy would consider it a gross violation of protocols, but survival sometimes required breaking rules. These young humans had already glimpsed evidence of his existence. Perhaps they could be turned from potential threats into assets. Their footsteps echoed through the facility's empty corridors. Ur made his decision. Instead of hiding, he began manipulating the facility's old systems, creating patterns of lights and sounds that would lead the teenagers to a specific location of his choosing. "Tommy, look at this," Sarah whispered, pointing to a series of lights flashing in sequence along the corridor. It's showing us where to go." "Be careful," Tommy replied, though he couldn't hide his excitement. "Remember what happened in the barn." Ur guided them to the facility's main control room, where he had prepared his revelation carefully. The room's old monitors flickered to life, displaying a simple message in English: "I mean no harm." The teenagers froze in the doorway, their devices forgotten in their hands. Ur slowly deactivated his camouflage, allowing them to see him clearly for the first time. Their reactions would determine not only his immediate future but potentially the nature of humanity's first official contact with alien life. Tommy's eyes widened in recognition. "I knew it. I knew what I saw was real." Sarah grabbed his arm. "Tommy, we should run. If I intended harm," Ur spoke through his suit's translation system, "you would never have seen me." The moment hung in perfect suspension, two young humans face to face with a being from another world, while above them, the military searched in ever-tightening circles. The choices made in the next few minutes would change everything. The facility's lights flickered as another power surge rolled through the town's grid. In the distance, sirens began to wail. Time was running out for all of them. The choice. Time seemed to freeze in the control room of the abandoned water treatment facility. Tommy and Sarah stared at Ur, their faces a mixture of fear, wonder, and curiosity that perfectly exemplified humanity's complex nature. Above them, the thrum of helicopter rotors grew steadily closer. "You're really an alien," Sarah whispered, her scientific mind visibly processing this paradigm-shifting reality. "But you're not. I mean, you don't look like your media's depictions." Ur finished, his translator converting his words into perfect English. Your species has an impressive imagination, but the universe is far more diverse than you realize. Tommy's eyes were fixed on Ur's environmental suit and the complex patterns shifting across its surface. You're hiding from the military. That's what all the power surges are about, isn't it? Creating interference with their equipment. Before Ur could respond, his suit's sensors detected multiple vehicles converging on their location. The military had finally traced the power fluctuations to their source. They had minutes at most. I need your help, Ur said directly, knowing time for subtlety had passed. My ship is damaged. I have the means to repair it, but I cannot reach the necessary materials without being detected. The consequences of my capture would be severe. Not just for me, but for your world. What do you mean? Sarah asked, her initial fear giving way to intense curiosity. There are those among my people who already view Earth as too dangerous to be allowed to develop freely, Ur explained, his antennae drooping slightly. If I'm captured, if my presence here becomes undeniable proof of alien life, they will push for more direct intervention. Your species' natural development would be redirected. Tommy and Sarah exchanged glances, the weight of this revelation visible in their expressions. The future of human independence potentially rested on their decision. What do you need? Tommy asked firmly. Ur quickly projected a holographic list of materials through his visor. Copper wire, specific electrical components, and most importantly, a stable power source. The high school's science lab has everything you need, Sarah finished, her eyes lighting up. I'm in the advanced physics program. But the school's locked down tight with all the military activity. Not everything's in the lab, Tommy added. My dad's repair shop has spools of copper wire, and I know where he keeps the key. A new alert flashed across Ur's vision, thermal imaging drones were approaching from multiple directions. His suit's camouflage was reaching its limits. We have approximately 18 minutes before this facility is surrounded, he informed them. If you choose to help me, it must be now. But understand, this decision could put you in danger. I cannot guarantee your safety. Sarah pulled out her phone, fingers flying across its screen. The military set up checkpoints on all main roads, but they haven't covered the old railroad tunnel. It runs right behind the school. And I can get Dad's truck, Tommy added. He's too busy with the investigators at the barn to notice it missing. Ur's antennae twitched with surprise at their quick thinking. You've decided to help so easily. Why? Are you kidding? Sarah grinned. This is first contact with an alien civilization. And instead of trying to experiment on us or take over our planet, you're actually worried about preserving our independence. How could we not help? Also, Tommy added more soberly, if we don't help and you get caught, it sounds like Earth's in big trouble anyway. A loud crash from the facility's entrance interrupted their conversation. The military had arrived. Ur's water tank immediately activated its defense protocols, creating a barrier of superheated steam to block the main corridor. Time to move, Ur announced. My robotic companion will create a diversion. Can you reach your father's truck without being seen? Tommy nodded. Meet us behind the old Mason factory in 10 minutes. The railroad tunnel entrance is there. Wait, Sarah interjected, pulling a small device from her backpack. Take my old phone. I've disabled the GPS, but it still works for basic communication. We'll need to coordinate. Ur accepted the primitive but ingenious communication device. As the teenagers slipped out through a back exit, he sent commands to his water tank. The machine would lead the military on a chase across town, buying them precious time. The next 15 minutes were a blur of careful movement and near detection. Ur used the storm drains to navigate around the military's perimeter, emerging behind the abandoned factory just as Tommy's truck pulled up, engine quietly idling. The railroad tunnel was a relic of the town's industrial past, its entrance nearly hidden by decades of overgrowth. As they drove into its darkness, Sarah used her tablet to monitor emergency radio frequencies. "They've found the water tank," she reported. "It's leading them on a chase through the town center. Wait, something's wrong. They're not all following it. They've figured out it's a diversion," Ur confirmed, his sensors detecting movement patterns. "Some units are maintaining their search pattern, expanding outward from the facility." The tunnel's darkness pressed around them, broken only by the truck's headlights and the gentle glow of Ur's suit. The air was thick with decades of dust and the musty scent of abandonment. "Almost there," Tommy whispered, unnecessarily. They all felt the tension mounting. The tunnel's exit opened behind the high school's athletic fields. In the growing evening darkness, they could see military vehicles patrolling the streets beyond the campus. "The physics lab has an outside entrance," Sarah explained, leading them toward a side door. "Ms. Henderson never locks it properly because she's always forgetting her keys." Inside, the school was eerily quiet. Their footsteps echoed through empty hallways as Sarah led them to the lab. True to her word, the door opened with a gentle push. As they gathered the needed materials, Ur's suit suddenly emitted a high-pitched alert. "Emergency transmission from my ship," he announced. "The self-repair systems have detected military personnel approaching. They've found it." Tommy and Sarah looked at each other, then at the pile of supplies they'd gathered. "We'll never get these to your ship in time," Sarah said. "Not with them all over it." "No," Ur agreed. "But perhaps we don't have to." His antennae twitched as an idea formed. "The ship's primary systems are functional. If I can boost its power remotely, the automated repairs might be enough for a short flight." "You want to move it?" Tommy asked incredulously. "Won't they see it?" "Yes," Ur said simply. "That's exactly what we want." Understanding dawned on Sarah's face. "A distraction. Get everyone chasing the ship while we smuggle the repair materials to wherever it lands." Working quickly, they connected their gathered components into a makeshift power amplifier. Ur interfaced with it through his suit, sending commands to his ship's AI. Across town, the military's radios exploded with activity as a strange craft suddenly rose from the cornfield, its surface rippling with otherworldly energy. As predicted, all units converged on its location. "The ship will lead them on a chase before landing at these coordinates," Ur explained, sharing the location through Sarah's phone. "An abandoned quarry 5 miles north. The terrain there will make it difficult for their vehicles to approach quickly." They loaded the supplies into Tommy's truck and took back roads to reach the quarry, arriving just as Ur's ship descended. Its hull showed significant damage, but the automated flight had worked. As they rushed to apply their jury-rigged repairs, Sarah's tablet buzzed with urgent alerts. "They're coming. All of them. Even the ones that were chasing your water tank." Ur worked feverishly, his suit's tools extending to interface with the ship's systems. The repairs weren't pretty, but they didn't need to be perfect, they just needed to work long enough for one good jump to orbit. The sound of approaching vehicles echoed off the quarry walls. Searchlights began sweeping the area. "You need to leave," Ur told the teenagers. "They cannot find you here." "Will we ever see you again?" Tommy asked. Ur's antennae twitched in what they had learned was his species' equivalent of a smile. "Perhaps. I will argue for Earth to be removed from quarantine status. Your species has proven itself more ready for contact than we realized." "And your people will listen?" Sarah asked. "They will have to. After all, I have evidence of humanity's capacity for understanding and cooperation." He held up Sarah's phone. "Your technology may be primitive, but your hearts are advanced indeed." The teenagers reluctantly returned to their truck, pulling away just as the first military vehicles crested the quarry's rim. Ur sealed his ship's hull and initiated the launch sequence. As his ship rose into the night sky, pursued by human aircraft that could never hope to catch him, Ur recorded his final log entry. Xenobiological Survey Update, Earth classification requires revision. While technically a death world, its true nature is far more complex. The humans are not merely surviving here, they are thriving, adapting, and most importantly, growing. Their capacity for fear is matched only by their capacity for wonder, their potential for destruction balanced by their potential for compassion. They are not ready for full contact, but they are ready for something more than quarantine. They deserve the chance to reach the stars on their own terms. The ship broke through Earth's atmosphere, leaving behind a world forever changed by a chance encounter. In a small town below, two teenagers watched the fading light of its passage, keeping a secret that would shape humanity's future. And in a forgotten barn at the edge of a cornfield, a strange robotic water tank stood silent sentinel, waiting for its master's return.